Have you ever just stopped and wondered what makes you, well, you? Today, we're going to dive into the very blueprint of our identity. We're going to trace it all the way back to those earliest moments and relationships that really build the foundation for everything else.
I mean, it's the biggest question there is, right? How do we become the people we are today? Is it our genes, the way we were raised, or something else entirely? Well, the answer isn't some single aha moment. It's actually a story that starts the second we're born.
So we're going to break that whole journey down. We'll start with the science behind our very first bonds, then we'll move through the really critical challenges we all face growing up, and finally, we'll see how all those pieces come together to assemble the unique person each one of us becomes.
Okay, so it all kicks off right here, with our very first relationship. For decades, scientists have been completely fascinated by the incredible power of this initial bond between a baby and their caregiver.
So back in the 50s, a psychologist named Harry Harlow did this really famous and honestly pretty controversial experiment. He separated baby monkeys from their mothers and gave them two fake ones. One was just made of wire, but it had a bottle of milk. The other was covered in soft, comfy cloth, but offered no food at all. The choice those little monkeys made, wow, it changed how we understand love forever.
And the results were just undeniable. The baby monkeys spent almost all their time clinging to that soft cloth mother. They'd only zip over to the wire mother for a quick bite to eat. So what this proved, really, is that connection isn't just about getting fed. It's about that feeling of comfort, of safety.
And this whole idea became a massive piece of what we now call attachment theory, which is really pioneered by a guy named John Bowlby. His theory is pretty simple at its core. We are biologically hardwired to form these deep connections, not just for food, but for a sense of security, a safe base that lets us go out and explore the world.
Now, these early experiences create different patterns. A child with a secure attachment knows their caregiver is a reliable, safe harbor. Then you have the avoidance style, which is often tied to neglect. The child basically learns not to count on anyone. With an ambivalent style, the care is really inconsistent, which creates a lot of anxiety. And finally, a disorganized style can happen when a caregiver is a source of both comfort and fear. These patterns become our very first rulebook for how relationships are supposed to work.
Okay, so once that first bond is in place, what happens next? Well, we start to find our own feet. As toddlers, we begin to run into these internal challenges, these developmental crossroads that really start to carve out our sense of who we are.
A psychologist named Erik Erikson saw these moments as a series of, well, crises, you could say. From birth up to about 18 months, we're dealing with trust versus mistrust. Basically, is the world safe? Then, as we learn to walk and talk, it's autonomy versus shame. Can I do things by myself? And then in those preschool years, we hit initiative versus guilt. Is it okay for me to go out and explore and try new things?
I mean, these are massive questions for a little kid, right? So how on earth do they figure it all out?
Well, the answer really lies in the environment around them. Specifically, in what you might call the emotional climate their parents create. The style of parenting we experience is like the map and compass that helps us get through these big challenges.
So a researcher named Diana Baumrandt basically broke this down into four main styles. Authoritative parents are the ones who are both demanding and responsive. They have high standards, but they're also warm and supportive. Then you have authoritarian parents. Yeah, they're the because I said so type. High on demands, low on warmth. Permissive parents are the total opposite. Lots of love, not a lot of rules. And then there's uninvolved parents, who are low on both, which often leads to kids who really struggle with self-control.
All right, so we're moving on up. As we go from being a preschooler to a school-age kid, our whole world just expands. That parenting style we just talked about really sets the stage for how we approach this next phase, where the blueprint we made at home gets tested and tweaked by the big social world of friends and teachers and classmates.
And with this bigger world come all these new challenges. Suddenly, you're not just a son or a daughter, you're a student, friend, maybe a teammate. And all these new roles force us to start asking one of life's biggest questions. Who am I really?
So Erikson's roadmap keeps going, of course. From about age 7 to 12, the big crisis is industry versus inferiority. This is when we're learning to read, do math, play sports, and we're constantly asking, can I actually make it in this world? Nailing this builds confidence. And then the big one hits in the teenage years, identity versus role confusion. We try on different personalities, we question our values, we're just trying to figure out who we are and where we're going.
And you know what becomes super important during this time? Friends. And just playing.
Play isn't just goofing off, it's like a training ground for life. It's where we learn the rules of society, how to cooperate, and how to be part of a team. Friendships become these little laboratories for figuring out other people and ourselves. The big takeaway here is that getting good at things, whether it's fractions, a video game, or making a friend, is how we build a really solid, confident sense of self.
So we've covered a lot of ground, right? From our very first bond, all the way through the major crossroads of childhood. Now, let's see how all these different pieces actually click together to form the blueprint for the rest of our lives.
You can almost think of it like building a house, Our attachment style, that's the foundation. How we get through all of Erikson's crises, well, that builds the frame of the house. And the parenting and social world around us, they're the builders putting it all together. Every single stage builds right on top of the last one. The key thing to remember is that none of this happens in a vacuum. It's not like you just check off these boxes. A secure attachment makes it way easier to develop trust. And that trust makes it easier to take initiative later on. And taking initiative is how you forge a strong identity. See? It's all one continuous story.
So, if you had to boil all of this research down to one single massive takeaway, what would it be? Well, it's this. While our genes and our natural temperament definitely play a part, the environment we grow up in, the love, the support, the rules, the responsiveness, it has a huge and lasting impact on the person we become. And that really just leaves one final question. For you, when you think about your own journey, how do you see all these forces at play? How did your first bonds, your childhood challenges, and your relationships all come together to assemble the unique blueprint that is you?